The wind carried the scent of rain and pine that evening, the kind that promised more than water. It promised change. A horse approached from the far line of dusk, its hooves dull against the muddy road. Its rider slumped as though the earth itself were pulling him down. His name was Jack, 34, and he had buried his wife that morning with his own hands. The grave sat on a hill beside the cottonwood tree she used to love, the soil still fresh, the cross still crooked. He hadn't said a prayer. He'd only stood there, hollowed out, waiting for something that never came. Relief, tears, maybe forgiveness. None of it came. Only the storm. Now the storm followed him, gray and relentless, pushing him toward the faint glow of a cabin window half hidden by brush. Smoke rose from its chimney like a thread of life against the dark sky. His hands trembled around the reins, not from cold, but from emptiness. He dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the wet dirt, eyes fixed on that small patch of light. Inside, Emma, 24, was mending a torn blanket beside the fire. Her hair, once the color of wheat in summer, had dulled to autumn gold, but her eyes still held the quiet strength of someone who refused to break. Widowhood had come to her 3 years ago, and she had learned to live with silence as her only company. The sound of a horse startled her. Visitors were rare this far from town, rarer still when the sun was dying. She stood, cautious, one hand near the old rifle by the wall. When the knock came, it wasn't loud, it was tired. A man's voice followed, soft, hoarse, heavy with a grief that made it almost sacred. "My wife died today. Can I spend the night with you?" The words hung there, trembling in the cold air. She opened the door partway. The man before her looked like he'd been carved out of sorrow, dust on his coat, mud on his boots, eyes rimmed red, but too dry for tears. He didn't look dangerous. He looked defeated. Emma hesitated. She could feel the rules of her life whispering, "Don't trust strangers." But loneliness recognized loneliness before fear could take root. She nodded once, stepping aside. "You can stay till morning." He thanked her with a quiet nod, the kind that carried gratitude too heavy for speech. Inside, the firelight wrapped him gently. The cabin was small, 2 chairs, 1 bed, a table scarred by years of survival. He removed his hat, ran a hand through damp hair, and stood there as if afraid to disturb the stillness. She poured him coffee, her movements careful but kind. He accepted it with both hands, fingers brushing the cup like it might vanish if he held it too tightly. For a long time, they said nothing. The only sound was the crackling fire and the slow rhythm of rain against the roof. Emma watched him from across the table. He had the look of a man who had walked too far and lost too much. She knew that look. She wore it once. Finally he spoke, his voice low and raw. She was sick. Fever came sudden. Doctor didn't make it in time. Emma's needle stopped midair. "I'm sorry." He nodded, gaze fixed on the floorboards. She wanted to see the mountains one last time. "I told her spring would be better. Now spring feels 1,000 years away." There was no comfort to offer, only the quiet understanding that comes from shared wounds. Emma poured more coffee, though neither needed it. "Was she your only family?" she asked. Jack looked up then, eyes distant. Only one that mattered. The words hit the air like a confession. The wind outside howled harder. Emma added another log to the fire. "You should rest. There's a cot near the stove." He shook his head. "I'll sit a while. My legs still remember the saddle." She didn't argue. She sat across from him again, folding her mending aside. The flames cast their faces in soft light. 2 survivors in a world that kept taking. Hours passed that way. Small talk about weather, cattle, the price of feed. But beneath it ran something deeper, an unspoken recognition of what it means to lose and keep living anyway. When Jack spoke of his ranch, abandoned now to the coyotes and wind, Emma saw the same ache she felt every morning when she woke to an empty chair across the table. "You've got land?" she asked softly. "Had," he said. "Can't bear to stay there now." Every corner still speaks her name. She understood. There were places in her cabin she couldn't look at too long either. The window where her husband once stood whistling, the chair that still creaked with memory. The storm thickened outside, rattling the shutters. She moved to secure them, and he followed instinctively helping. Their hands brushed once on the latch, just a touch, fleeting, but enough to send a strange warmth through the cold air. "Thank you," she murmured. He stepped back. Habit. Hard to sit still when there's work to do. The way he said it, quiet, almost apologetic, made her chest tighten. Work had kept her alive, too. It was easier than feeling. When the wind finally calmed, she lit a second lamp. Jack's shadow stretched long on the wall, his shoulders still burdened by something too heavy for words. He stared into the fire. "I buried her at dawn," he said suddenly. "No preacher. Just me. I thought I'd feel something when it was done. But it was just dirt. Just silence." Emma's throat tightened. Sometimes silence is all the answer we get. He looked at her then, really looked. The lamplight softened the hard edges of his grief. "You've lost someone too." She nodded once. 3 winters ago. He went out to check the fence line in a storm. Didn't come back. They let that truth hang between them, fragile as smoke. Outside, the world was a blur of rain and night. Inside, the air grew still, intimate. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Keep going." Her gaze drifted to the window, where the storm pressed faintly against the glass. "Because the world don't stop just because you hurt. You wake up, feed the animals, fix what's broken. And somehow that becomes enough." He nodded slowly. "Maybe I came here hoping someone would remind me of that." Her lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close. "Then maybe you came to the right place." The clock ticked. The fire sank to embers. They sat in companionable silence, 2 hearts beating quietly in the aftermath of loss. Later, when the wind moaned again, Emma rose to fetch another blanket. Jack stood, too, reaching instinctively to help. Their hands met again, this time lingering. He caught her gaze, something flickering there. Hesitation, gratitude, fear. "I didn't mean to burden you," he said softly. "You didn't," she replied. "Sometimes it helps just having someone breathe in the same room." He swallowed hard. "Feels like I've been holding my breath for months." Her voice gentled. "Then breathe here. Just for tonight." For a long while, neither moved. The storm outside softened into a hush, like the world itself was listening. Emma returned to her chair, wrapping the blanket around herself. Jack sat opposite, watching the firelight dance across her face. It wasn't beauty that struck him, it was strength, quiet and unyielding, the kind that grows from surviving everything you shouldn't have had to. She caught him staring, and he looked away quickly, murmuring, "I'm sorry." "Don't be," she said. "It's been a while since anyone looked at me like I was still alive." Those words broke something open in him. He leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was done feeling anything. But sitting here, he stopped himself, shaking his head. "It's too soon." "Maybe," she said. "But maybe that's what healing sounds like." The clock struck midnight. Outside, the clouds began to part, letting silver light spill across the land. Jack stood, restless, pacing once toward the door. His hand hovered over the handle, as though deciding whether to leave or stay. "You don't have to run anymore," Emma said quietly behind him. He turned, eyes glistening. "If I stay, I'm afraid I'll remember how to live again." Her breath hitched, soft but sure. "Then remember." The word stopped him. He stared at her for a long time, then crossed the room with deliberate slowness. He stood close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," he whispered. "My heart's a graveyard, Emma." "Then let something grow from it," she replied. He closed his eyes, every muscle trembling. When he opened them again, there was something new behind them. Not hope exactly, but the faintest echo of it. "I need you to know," he said, voice breaking. "You've been the only light I've seen since she closed her eyes. And I don't know what that means, but it means something." Her eyes shimmered. "It means you're still human." He reached for her hand then, gently, as if afraid she'd vanish, like a dream. She didn't pull away. The warmth of her skin steadied him. For the first time in months, he felt alive. Not whole, but human. The fire popped softly beside them, as though blessing the moment. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling now, "you made me remember what it feels like to be seen again." He exhaled, tears finally finding their way. and you made me remember what it feels like to have something worth staying for. Outside, dawn crept slow and golden over the plains, light seeping through the window like forgiveness. They stood there, two strangers bound by loss, held by something deeper than words. The narrator's voice would have said, if one were there to hear, sometimes love doesn't return as thunder, it returns as shelter. One night, one heart, one quiet confession at a time. And as the sun rose, Jack stayed, not as a wanderer anymore, but as a man who'd finally found somewhere to rest his sorrow, and perhaps, one day, his love.